Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to a brand new series from M&A on technology. We call this our Tech Town Hall, and this is the first of a monthly series that we are going to be starting today. The entire purpose of this town hall is to bring technology to you all and to highlight different vendors who are doing some different things across the country that we think are applicable to Montana, applicable to nonprofits, applicable to budgets of all sizes, staff of all sizes, the work that we do to sort of cut through some of the noise that we have regarding which technology to use, what's going to work for us, what's the best bang for a buck, et cetera. This will be the only town hall where you get to listen to me for the whole hour, because today we're just going to kind of intro where we're going and intro the why behind this series. After this, we're going to be bringing in folks from across the tech sector, different vendors, different experts, different consultants to highlight different solutions. So today is just get an overview from me of where we're going and why, and get some tips on how to adopt technologies. And then moving into the future, starting in February, we're going to move into other content. My name, if you don't know me, my name is Adam Jesperson. I'm the Director of Innovation here at the Montana Nonprofit Association. Joining me on this call are my colleagues Michael Hale and Shelby Regala. They're monitoring the chat and will be joining us in conversation throughout. This series will be recorded, and you'll be able to watch this after the fact or whenever you'd like to. By signing up for this series, you probably actually registered yourself for for this session. You probably registered yourself for the entire series. Hopefully this shows up in your calendar. The second Tuesday of every month at 2 p.m. Tech Town Hall, Tuesdays at 2. Where we're going to focus on technology. So hopefully you can join us for these. If you're not able to make the live session, you can watch recordings in the future. As I mentioned, our agenda for today, we're going to intro the why behind the series. What are we going to focus on? Talk a little bit about what we're seeing with technology in the COVID-19 era and what some different organizations are doing, or at least what the nonprofit sector is leaning into. And then thirdly, we're going to leave you with some tips to, after you've decided to pick up a new technology, or at least look into a new technology, how can that adoption be successful and to get the return that you're after in the implementation that you have. So why are we focusing on technology? A couple stats up here for you. The average nonprofit spends about 3% of their budget every year on technology, not on staffing, not on the IT person or consulting for IT services, but on hardware and software, on stuff, on programming, on platforms, on computers, and whatever that might be. 3%. So, and that's a significant margin. You know, when you think about most of us operate budgets that don't have 3% margin on the bottom line. Spending 3% on technology is a pretty big investment every year. And I would be willing to wager that what we're spending on technology in the last 12 months or the last 9 months is probably a lot more than it was 12 months prior because of COVID-19, because of everything that we're facing, and the shift towards using technology more in our services, probably universally for almost all of us. We've probably seen that. The flip side of that is that most stats I've seen said that the failure rate for nonprofit technology adoption is about 50%. It's about a flip of a coin. Failure rate meaning, did this platform, did this program achieve the ends that we wanted it to achieve when we first started down this road of adopting this and utilizing this and building this into our operations or our programming or our services? There's about a 50% failure rate on whether that's going to be successful or not. So we're investing a lot of money, a lot of resource, a lot of time, and increasingly, probably more and more and more. And sometimes we're not having great success with whether or not we're achieving the ends that we're out to achieve with those, and whether that's better contact with our donors, better contact with our clients, saving money, saving time, saving whatever it might be. We don't always get that return, that bang for a buck. So The purpose of this series is to try to wade through that a little bit and help you make some decisions regarding the technology you're using. And as you'll see, learn from each other a little bit. This isn't just about us. This is about creating a space and a forum within the sector in Montana for us to learn from each other. So that 3.2%, as I said, that's broken up between hardware and software, hardware being tangible things, computers, servers, printers, mice, etc. The other side of that is software, which is our programs, all the things that make your computer run, the programs that you use. For this series, we are not focused on hardware. We're focused on software, on different programs, different platforms, different infrastructure that you can use for your mission. And not just any software, we're focused on a sort of a subset, which is probably most all software these days. Something that you may not know what the term for it was, but you definitely know what it is, called software as a service, SaaS, S-A-A-S. The definition in Wikipedia for SaaS is a software licensing and delivery model in which software is licensed on a subscription basis and centrally hosted. It's referred to as on-demand software, software plus, also known as web-based software, on-demand, hosted software. Most all software applications that we do, most all programs, most all things that we buy today is probably going to be SaaS, software as a service. And for any of you who've been around computers for any length of time, you've sort of seen this evolution happen. The best example I can give you is Microsoft Office products. We used to go down to Staples and buy the disk for our Office products, and we would put the disk in, we'd download the program, we'd type in our product key, and we'd have access to that on that machine for a year or until we got the next update that came 12 months later, whatever that might be. Then it moved to, you could go online, you could download the Office products onto your computer and have them there, and you type in the product key. Now, if any of you have Office now, what do? You pay monthly per user per month, and you have access to those programs wherever you are. You're able to sit down to your computer and have access to Office on any computer as long as you have internet access. So that's an example of software as a service. We're all using Zoom right now. Zoom is software as a service. M&A pays per user per month for access to Zoom, and we have access to that program. The SaaS market is pretty ubiquitous in the tech space now. We're all using all kinds of different software technologies. Those are what we're going to focus on in this town hall because there's a ton of them out there. They can add value, and we want to make sure that we're bringing to you those that we've seen that seem to work for nonprofits, A, and seem to work for nonprofits in Montana, B, because we have some unique challenges with accessibility and budget and some access issues. So SaaS has some advantages over the old school sort of download software, host platforms, host softwares on your own machine, your own servers. They have some advantages. Number one, that they're more affordable. Instead of having to invest in a lot of back office infrastructure, servers, computers, that types of things, all you have to have is access to the internet and the ability to pay a monthly fee for the number of users that you want to be able to use that platform. It's much more affordable for you to get in the game than it was when we had to host everything yourself. It's much more accessible, like I just mentioned. As long as you have internet access, you can access that software and access your database or whatever the program is that you're trying to use. It's scalable, meaning that if you want to just try it out and you as the executive director or you as the finance person or you as the IT director decide, hey, I want to just sort of test this program out, I can buy the license, I can get it installed, I can do just for me and see if it works. And then if it's going to work for the next department, we can add more licenses. If we want to do more next month, we can add more licenses, more users, and scale it up as big or as small as we want. Zoom, again, is a great example of that, where we here at M&A, we sort of flex our Zoom usage, flex our Zoom licenses, and our access to that program monthly, depending on what we need it for. So when we have the conference, we bought a lot more access to Zoom. When we're just doing sort of day-to-day programming, that's more normal, we can scale that back. So it's a scalable solution. The other big advantage is it's always updated. You're probably about every day being asked to update this program or update that program, or the updates are just automatic. You don't even see them. It just happens. You log in and you see, hey, this screen looks different. So you're always getting the most current information, the most current program, not having to worry about running updates or worry about having to run a program for 12 months and then go download the next version the next year that has whatever updates they've decided to implement over the last 12 months. There are some negatives to SaaS technologies. Number one, even though it's an advantage, accessibility, it's also a disadvantage, which is access. We're in Montana. High-speed internet is not the most common thing out there. It's better. It's a lot better than it used to be. I hope that it's going to continue to get better. But there are some places where good access to high-speed internet is limited, and access to the programs that you can log into and use are limited. So that's a con. Security is also, it's probably both a plus and a minus, but security can be a negative because your data, if you're paying for a software solution, your data, your information is now hosted, lives somewhere else. It's not in your possession. It's not in your servers. Someone else is responsible for making sure that data is secure, and that they're making sure that no bad actors can get in and do bad things with that. Now, I will say that they're much smarter than I am. So I would rather they have that ability to secure my data than I will, because they're better at it than I am. But we have to make sure that we're using vendors and using solutions that we know are taking the best steps to protect our data and make sure information is secure. So it can be a con because it's out of our control. And then the last is that issue of control. The last con that I've listed here, and that's because even if we have a program on our own servers, our own machines, we have a little more access to how we can change things, what we make things look like, what adaptations we make, what kind of customizations we can do, versus logging into a program. Sometimes that's out of our hands, it's out of our control, and we're just sort of left to take what they give us, and what sort of functionality and what sort of updates they decide they want to roll out and push to us as users. So this series, as I mentioned, is meant to focus on this idea of SaaS, software as a service. And as I mentioned a few times, we're focusing on this because the amount that you are probably seeing as a nonprofit leader, as a manager, as a director, of vendors saying, I've got what you need, I will fix your problem, I have the shiny object that's going to solve your issues, it's probably pretty overwhelming. Or you hear people say, well, there's an app for that, there's a solution for that, you just got to go out and find it. Well, there is an app and a solution for everything. I've no doubt about that. But it's overwhelming to find those, cut through the noise on what can be useful for you. Worldwide, there's about at least 11,000 SaaS vendors, SaaS programs that are marketing their products to businesses, which include nonprofit businesses like you and I. Even if 10% of those were focused specifically or useful for nonprofit organizations, that's over 1,000, that's 1,100 plus, that we have to sort of wade through and say, okay, what's good for us? What's affordable for us? How much should we be spending? What functionality should we have? What can we let go? All those questions that we ask as we kind of look at a vendor or look at a new solution for different challenges we have. It can be overwhelming. And so that's our goal here we're not going to be able to focus on all 1,100 of those or 11,000 of those or however many there is. But each month we're going to bring in an outside expert, a consultant, a vendor representative in some cases, someone who can help with sort of highlight what they have and why they think it's useful for you as a nonprofit operating in Montana, to just show what they have, the what's, the whys, the hows, et cetera, of that solution. We're going to, like I said, we're going to focus on bringing what we know works here. And what we've sort of seen and have sort of vetted and curated and said, yeah, we think this is worth pushing out to our members. In addition to that, starting in March, after we've done a couple months worth of content and sort of gotten a feel for this forum, we're going to start off a monthly affinity group call, which will be a secondary call to the town hall. And it's it will be much less focused on content and more focused on conversation, to just come together and talk about what's working for you as an organization, what's working. If you're using the products or the content that we've have highlighted in the town hall, how's it going? What questions do you have? What can we help troubleshoot? What operational challenges do you have that you want to sort of cast out to the group and have a conversation about what tech exists out there that other members may have seen and used, and to just learn from each other. That peer support, that peer learning, I think is going to be a really powerful thing for us. So we're going to sort of wade into this, do 2 or 3 months worth of this content, this forum, before we start that affinity group, which will be, like I said, focused on having the conversation and getting in the weeds around what's working for you and what's not. Are you adopting the technology that we just highlighted last month? How's it going? You have any questions? You have any challenges? How can we support that? And so just to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the things that we're going to be focusing on here, there was an article that it's linked here in TechSoup, which is a great advocate for nonprofit technology. Just how is COVID-19 changing the technology needs for nonprofits? Most nonprofits, and this probably, maybe you're nodding if you've been utilizing any of this, there's been a much greater emphasis on digital fundraising and marketing automation tools. So a greater emphasis on having functionality within your donor database, your CRM, the ability to do more proactive email marketing to your people, ability to connect with social media, just day-to-day or real time, because that's how we're communicating with people now. Peer-to-peer fundraising, digital event management. How many of us have seen our events go from being fully in person to being fully online, and what tech is available to help support that and make that feel as relationship-based as possible, so that it's helpful for us. Those are areas where nonprofits are shifting and adding technology where we maybe weren't thinking about that 12 months ago or even 6 months ago. Technologies to connect staff and to connect our clients internally. So video conferencing. Most of us probably used Zoom a little bit 9 months ago, and now it's second nature for us. How are we connecting with our staff who maybe were working remotely with data storage, or with file sharing, or with instant messaging and communication? How are we connecting with our constituents in a way that's helpful? You know, I've heard of organizations now who are using different technologies for sort of call-in centers that link to their cell phones, so that they're able to still communicate with constituents, even though they're clients, even though they maybe can't provide that in-person service that they used to in the past. So those are technologies that nonprofits are adopting at a pretty high rate. And all of it is under this guise of what can we have that's flexible and scalable, because things are changing so fast that I need something that I know can pivot with me, that can grow with me, that can shrink with me when needed, and is adapt at that. So these are just some of the things we're gonna try to focus on all this. And you notice when you register for the series, you saw an agenda for January, February, and March, and then didn't sort of see the topics from April through December. That's intentional. We're going to get those out quickly or pretty soon, but we don't want to get so far out with setting our agenda that we end up highlighting topics that aren't relevant for the times, knowing that things are changing so fast. So we want to be a bit nimble in what we're presenting, so that we're able to provide you with what we think is most appropriate, most timely, and most useful for you in the moment right now. So more to come on those topics, and we definitely want to get your feedback on that as well. I think at the end of this call, if we have any time, I'd love just to have some chat conversation and even video conversation around what you hope to see, what you would hope that we focus on as far as different technologies. So, and I want to spend the next few minutes talking about just some tips to think about in the adoption of technology. So what we don't want this to be is M&A providing or presenting the next shiny object that you have to have and figure out a way to incorporate into your operations. We want to make sure that technology serves as a help, as an assist to the operations and service delivery that you have, but doesn't sort of become a thing unto itself. Done effectively, I love this quote, done effectively, technology adoption isn't gadget chasing. It's strategically selected tools that empower staff and stakeholders to deliver on mission. It's building that culture that welcomes digital, non-digital, and hybrid solutions. So it's not about finding technology or making sure that you're investing more and more into tech. It's more about what are the pains you have, what are the challenges you have, what are you trying to accomplish, and is there something, is technology the best thing that's going to help support that, or is it something else? Is it something more simple, or something that you can do that it doesn't involve computers at all? So we want to make sure that we're grounding this work in that. We're not expecting that you go out and sign up for, if we do 12 months worth of content, that you go out and sign up for 12 brand new shiny objects, 12 new software platforms and software infrastructure. You may find one or two where you go, man, that scratches the itch we have. We need to go get that, or we already have that. We just need to figure out how to use it better, whatever it might be. We're not anticipating that this just becomes you chasing more and more technology, but becomes something that just supports the good work that you're doing in your communities. To that end, I want to give 3 strategies that, as we're walking through this and as we're giving you highlighting the sort of the basics, who, what, where, when, why of different vendors, different software solutions, SaaS solutions. What are 3 things that you should be thinking about as you sort of vet, is this something for us? The first is what I just mentioned, which and is by far the most important here. Make sure that this technology and whether or not you're going to adopt this and implement this is aligned with your strategy, aligned with your plan, aligned with what you do in your community. What are you trying to solve? What's the problem? And start from that place. So start from identifying the challenge you have, the issue you're trying to achieve, the community need you're trying to address, the strategy you're trying to reach, different donors or clients, or whatever it might be. Start there, identify that, be crystal clear on that with your staff, with the leadership team that's assigned with making this decision, before you really start to look at what's even out there for you. So that might, the problem might be, we need to better connect with our clients. We need to better connect our staff who are working remotely. We're not able to communicate as best as we would like to. Our relationships are suffering as staff because we're not able to connect, and we need to find a way to solve that. That's the issue. Now we've got a crystal clear plan on what that might be, and maybe there's a technology that can help us with that, or maybe it's just that we need to figure out something again that's not even tech-based at all. Secondly, is make sure that you've got your leadership team on board. Now, most of you on here, Montana Nonprofits, we run small staffs, and most of you on here are probably in a leadership capacity. If you are, that's great. If you're not, and you find that, hey, we've found the problem, we found the solution, make sure that you have leadership on board, and leadership being those within the organizations that control the purse strings, that can outline the implementation and training plan for the rest of the organization, and that can really make sure that the adoption of this tool, the adoption of this thing, the software, this technology, filters into all facets of the organization, or at least as far as it needs to, for it to be successful, so that everyone understands this is what we're doing, we're getting behind this, and we're going to use this. Make sure it's not siloed, make sure it doesn't exist with someone who doesn't have the authority to really step out and make those decisions. And thirdly, articulate the details of your action plan, your training plan. So what is it? How long is it going to take to build this solution out for you? If it's a kind of a client database or a donor database or whatever it might be, how long is it going to take to build it up on the vendor side? And what's the plan to get your staff trained in being able to use that to its fullest extent? What are some features that you may push off for a little while? What needs to be learned on day one? And also what needs to maybe fall by the wayside to create the bandwidth for your organization to implement the solution. Oftentimes it's not about piling on more and more. Oftentimes we can't pile on more and more. We're taxed with the day-to-day as it is, and that's where technology seems to fall flat, is where we present the solution, we present what it is that we want to bring to the organization, and our staff says, I don't have the bandwidth for it. I'm barely staying above water, and I'm not willing to sort of invest the time or the energy or the resources to get up to speed on using this, and change my previous practice to now using this new, what I think as a shiny object that may not serve the best purpose of the organization. So carve out the time, carve out the space, and create that detailed training plan that it's going to take to make sure that everyone feels comfortable knowing what they need to know and using what they need to use once that solution reaches its becomes implemented and goes starting to try to solve the objectives that you set out with in step one. And I want to give a quick example of how we here at M&A walked through those 3 steps in adopting a new technology that we knew nothing about 9 months ago. Before COVID, we probably couldn't even pronounce it. We may not be able to pronounce it now. And it's this app called Whova, which if you were with us at the conference, you became very familiar with this because this was the app that we used to facilitate our annual conference back in October. We set out to hold a virtual conference, which was the first time we've ever done that. Usually it's in person, and we made the decision because of public health concerns to make it 100% virtual. We made an operational decision that this was important to us. And from that, we ended up with this new solution, this new piece of tech that served our purpose very well, but it flowed out of identifying the objective. I want to bring in my colleague Shelby Rogala, who was the point person on all that. She's in charge of our professional development program, and she was the one who found and vetted and got the rest of us up to speed on using Whova. And I want to bring her in and just ask her, hopefully she's here. There she is. Ask her a couple questions. So Shelby, as we made the decision to use Whova, what sort of questions were we asking as a staff to really help us not just chase the shiny object, but to really make sure that this was the right thing for us and the right piece for us to adopt?
Great question, Adam. Thanks. So it was a series of questions, and I think that when we were planning our conference, we took a big picture step back as we shifted to virtual in spring of last year, starting to plan for our September conference. What were the goals of the conference overall, and what would we need to achieve those? And for us, our conference is always about content, of course, a little bit of inspiration and motivation from some of those keynote speakers, and also connection. That's something people come back to time and time again. In the initial months of planning, we looked at a couple of different products that were quite expensive and pretty bulky and very different from the world we had kind of become used to, the simplicity of Zoom. They were a little bit more involved. And so we put it on the back burner for a while to say, I think we might be able to kind of create our own solution here that meets our needs and creates a good conference experience and isn't kind of this whole big shiny new thing. So there was a little bit of, we've got a lot of new things in the world. This is May of 2020. Maybe we don't need to add anything more complicated, but throughout conversations about that third piece of our goals for every conference, which is that connectivity and that kind of ability for people to network with each other individually in groups, it became clear that the tools that we had at our disposal weren't quite adequate to meet that third goal of creating connection and kind of a cohesive experience for our conference attendees. So, and that was through, about a month probably of talking through it with the staff and looking at some options. Whova was introduced, and Adam, if I
No, you're great. Yep.
Jump ahead of the question, let me know.
This is fine.
So Whova was introduced and through some other state associations as a great tool. And so it kind of fit the mixture of things, which were, we knew we had been hosting webinars and trainings in Zoom all spring, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the summer. So we wanted to make sure for our staff and also for our attendees, for all of you guys, right, that it was a format that was familiar enough that it didn't feel scary and intimidating either to operate or to join in. And so because Whova integrated with that and also added that layer of connectivity and networking, we're like, okay, this could be an option. And it was also fairly cost effective compared to other apps out there, right? So it kind of started to check the boxes of offering what we needed at the time.
Great. Yeah. So that focus on connection, on relationship, and that was a kind of a core value that we set out. That said, this has to happen. This conference will not be successful. It will not be the M&A conference without that, which I think allowed us to start from that place of values and start from that place of needs, instead of just saying, okay, what's out there, and what can we throw money at, and to create a conference experience. Thank you. So then there's the piece on executive leadership or executive sponsorship. And this is something you had found Whova, right? I mean, you had gone out and found this and done the vetting and said, this is what we want to go with. But there was still that next step of getting the rest of the team on board. Can you talk briefly just around that process and making sure that everyone, including leadership, not just Liz, but the rest of us as leaders, sort of felt comfortable making this decision to use this new technology for what is a pretty big initiative that M&A has?
Yeah, and Adam, you might have to, or Michael, fill in the gaps here, because I'm like, when was that?
Right.
August, July. So I think, after doing some research, I believe I brought in you and maybe Michael as well to kind of investigate Whova alongside me a little bit more, so that it wasn't just my decision, but kind of a core group of ours. And then we kind of pitched that to the rest of the team. And I think that it goes back to that first answer, right? Which was, it was successful being adopted as a concept by the team because we had kind of all agreed that it would be pretty hard to manage the conference and create the experience we wanted to without some type of additional technology or platform. Mm-hmm. So that pitch became easier, right? Because it was values-based, kind of outcome-based conversation, rather than, I really like this, design platform or whatever it was, right?
Whatever it might be.
It went right back to that value and expressed outcome.
And two, I remember back to that time where we even had the conversation, do we just create a bunch of Zoom meetings and build a web page and hire someone to build this for us and go through that work? And we sort of made the call that that's a lot more work, and B, that's probably gonna be a lot more money and resource for us than just using this platform. So I think that's maybe another good example of sometimes, even though we may get a little sticker shock at what some of these software solutions cost, oftentimes when we back out how much we are already spending, both in time and in hard cash, we find that it's right in line or maybe more affordable to get someone that just, it's sort of plug and play. This is what they do.
Adam and Shelby, if you don't mind me jumping in, one thing that Shelby mentioned that was really key to our team was she found the people on our team who were going to be using the platform and got them investigating to help make an informed pitch to the rest of the team to say, yes, this is really good. We can manage that. And so that made the pitch a lot easier to the rest of the team because they knew the people who were going to be really in it really felt comfortable with it.
Great. And that last step, Shelby, is on training. So you had a very detailed training plan laid out for us to use Whova, and it was very, I'm thankful that you did. But can you just walk through some of your thought process on building out a training plan that was going to work to make sure that all the staff, all the users, all the folks that are going to have to build meetings and facilitate sessions and all that felt comfortable doing what they needed to do on day one of the conference?
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. So I think we've all had that experience of walking into a new website, even a website, a platform. There are, I think, two things that help us navigate whatever new digital environment or platform we're stepping into to have a good time. The first is just familiarity, right? I mean, we have to go to a website a couple of times. I have to go to the Montana Nonprofit website a couple of times to find the information I need to find before it becomes kind of second nature, that I can just get the information I need and know it. And that, frankly, all it takes is just exposure to that platform or that website. And I'm using website as an example because it's easy to conceptualize, but any platform, right? Excel, QuickBooks, Teams, Slack, right? The more we're in it, Facebook, the more we can navigate it. And there's no real skill development there. It's just like time in front of the screen, right? And so I knew we needed that in order to support our conference attendees, which was just like, do we know where the home screen button is? Do we know where that is? The second thing that I think helps us be effective is some of that more skill development of like, what are the tips and tricks, not just of basic navigation, but of like core functions to support an event or a platform or a user functionality, right? So I wanted to create and I didn't want us to do that the week of conference. I didn't want us to get to the Friday of conference and be like, oh, wow, this week would have been way easier if we had just known this. And of course, there were some things that we learned during the week of conference. But I would say, you know, the goal of getting us familiar with the platform enough to navigate it as an entire team, knowing that with, you know, the volume of folks we had at the conference, at one point or the other, all of us were going to have to troubleshoot some of those questions. So getting us all familiar with the platform, starting in September with some bi-weekly trainings. And sometimes, honestly, we just hopped onto the Whova website and like pulled up different pages as a team so that we all knew we were kind of doing that work. And then the other part of those bi-weekly meetings throughout September leading up to the conference were like specific troubleshooting things we could kind of troubleshoot together about how we wanted to embed certain things, how we wanted some things to look, how to pull a certain report, so that we all kind of had a baseline of being able to operate. And that was pretty important to me because, again, you don't want to be figuring it all out the week of conference. What was easy about that, if I might add one more thing, Adam, is that we had an event, right? We had this end date. We kind of had to have that knowledge, that familiarity and navigability for, right? It was like this trophy at the end of the tunnel or light at the end of the tunnel. So it was easy to build a training schedule that we could stick to because we didn't have an option. I think with other adoptions of software, we forget that piece because we're like, well, we'll learn it down the road. And then we often don't. So that was a big lesson for me, is like, pretend like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even if there isn't, so you can stick to that kind of group training and familiarity.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, hopefully those 3 tips that I gave on finding your objectives, getting your team, your leadership on board, and then being very specific and detailed in training. As I actually sort of found those tips, found that procedure, and then thought back and thought, man, that's kind of exactly what we ended up doing when we selected Whova, and it was very successful for us. Given it was for a week-long event that was done, and then we got to say, okay, that was great. Now that was done, which, as Shelby mentioned, that's different than a lot of processes and procedures and service deliveries and operations that we have to do in nonprofit organizations, which are just endless or indefinite in length. And so that it's a little bit different in that regard, but hopefully that still provides some examples for you of just how to think through whether or not and how you should adopt a new technology platform. So this month is a little bit lighter. It's our intro. We wanted to get you sort of comfortable with what it is we're going to be focusing on and why. Next month, we're going to dive into really kind of a foundational software that most all of us can and should be familiar with, but really may not be using to its fullest extent in the era of COVID-19 and remote work and the need to have accessible access to our information, to our files, to our staff at any time, anywhere. So we're going to focus on Office 365, which is the entire suite of Office products. So Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, all those things. The 365 version is the cloud-based version, the version that's hosted centrally by Microsoft, where you pay your monthly subscription and you have access to it anywhere, anytime. There are some tremendously powerful functions within 365 that can be supportive of your staff, of your clients, and of your operations in the era of COVID-19, where we're doing more work more nimbly and more remotely in different places. So we're actually going to spend 2 months on this. The first session, which will be next month, is the basics, what it is, how you can get it. Microsoft has some great discounts and programs for nonprofits. You should actually be able to get the program for free, or if not free, very reduced cost, depending on the functionality you need, and just some basics on what it can do, some things that you may know and some things you may not. The second part of that, the March session, will be more in-depth on some specific aspects of Microsoft Office 365 that can support remote work functionality. Our presenter for next month, I think he's actually even on this call, is gentleman Ethan Galani. He's the Chief Technology Officer for Microtech USA. They are an approved Microsoft solution provider. So this is what they do. They help organizations get set up using Microsoft products, in addition to other things. A subset of what they do is just helping organizations get set up with 365 and make sure that it's secure, make sure that it's functioning the way that it needs to function, and helping troubleshoot any issues that organizations may have. They deal with both nonprofits and for-profit organizations, and Ethan should provide a really good consult for us in making sure that you all have the information you need to see if that solution is going to work for you, A, and B, many of you may already, like I said, may already have Office products, and make sure that you're using it to its fullest extent to support the work that you needed to support. So we're excited about that. We have a few minutes here, and I would, if you can entertain me for this last session, for this last few minutes, if there are any topics, any either challenges, operational challenges, or even just specific vendors, specific products that you would like us to focus on, things that are top of mind for you, needs that are top of mind for you. If you want to even just type in the chat what those are, we'll get a record of that. We'll read them now, but we'll also be able to get a record in the chat log of the things that you're mentioning. Because like I said, we want to make sure that we're staying just a few months ahead with our programming on this to make sure that we're addressing that which is top of mind for you, so that we can support your needs. So if you have a few minutes before we go, any questions for me, feel free to type those in the chat. And also, if you have anything that's top of mind for you regarding topics, please feel free to put those in the chat as well.
Adam, this struck me while you're going through the pros and cons of some of these solutions, just as folks are typing things in the chat. And I can't remember if you and I had been having this conversation or if I was reading an article or saw a documentary or something, but it was just talking about the cost of software and platforms and programs, and that if you are not paying for the product, you are the product in some sense.
Yes.
So when we think about that cost, especially as organizations, there's this trade-off with control and data and security and cost, and often that relationship. So that might be something interesting to explore, maybe very briefly, down the road this year.
Yeah, thank you. Seeing in the chat, looking forward to 365 info. We'll be looking at meeting scheduling tools like Doodle. That's a great aspect to focus on. Doodle, Calendly, things like that we're using more and more to organize our time and schedule meetings with one another. It's on our radar. Thank you. Membership management systems like that Apricot. So CRMs, relationship management systems. That's a big one. I downloaded it was a quick guide, quote unquote, from a vendor or from a consultant who said, here's the quick guide to choosing a CRM for your organization. And the quick guide was 100 pages long. There's a ton out there and a ton of functionality and a ton of vendors. And so that's, again, something we're going to focus on for sure. Internet security for remote workers. Trace, are you referring to internet security as far as like file storage, file security, or something more specific? Yeah, file security, great. We'll focus on that for sure. Backup systems, how do we store data in the cloud? I think our session on Office 365 is going to cover a lot of this because it's such a, it's Microsoft, so it's the 800-pound gorilla. And I think we'll be able to focus on a lot of these issues and how at least that tool can help support that. Awesome. Well, if there aren't any other questions for today, I'm happy to gift you back 15 minutes of time here at the end of the afternoon. And Ethan, like I thought Ethan was on the line. Ethan, our presenter for next month, is here, and he'll be with us next month as well. We're glad you're here. Thank you for the time today. I know it was a bit lighter than what we typically will do, but we hope that this series adds value and really, like I said, sort of cuts through some of the noise that we have regarding everything that's out there and what's useful for us as nonprofit organizations. So please feel free to call or email me if there's anything else that comes to your mind that you say, hey, I would love M&A to speak to this technology. Please feel free to email me and we'll make sure it goes on the list for us to touch on. And we will see you next month. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.